So, good morning. I have an interesting task this morning because I was not here for the first 2 days, and yet, to some extent, I'm opening the third day, which is about ethics and regulation and consciousness. So, Igor was kind enough to pick me up in the car yesterday from the airport, and we talked a lot about what had happened and what will happen. And it made me think of almost the first encounter I had with AI, which was with thinking machines, Danny Hillis's company, long ago. And their chief something, David Waltz, said words are not in themselves carriers of meaning, but simply pointers to shared understanding. And to me, that's so fundamental to what we're talking about here. It's what AI is the understanding, and then there are these little pointers to it between people, between machines, and without that understanding, you can't have anything else. So what I'm trying to do here is set up a shared understanding for the rest of the day around ethics and regulation and consciousness. So the first thing about ethics is I don't think AI changes ethics. What it will do is it will change our understanding of ethics, because in order to develop AI that implements ethics, we need to be much clearer in our own understanding of what the ethical rules are. In essence, ethics is about trade-offs. Is it good to murder somebody? No. But is it good to murder somebody if they are going to murder all the Jews in Germany? And that seems like a very simple trade-off, but first you need the part of AI, if you like, that recognizes situations, concepts, people, whatever. I had my own little ethical challenge this week. It was a very small one, but the whole point of ethics is you mostly incorporate it by reference. You don't consult your ethics book every week. You kind of know. I was at a board meeting for Yandex. What is our purpose? What is the ethical set of rules? It's basically around increasing the value of the company. And you can argue, is that for the shareholders or for the employees or for the government that regulates it? But you don't think about that too much, and that's sort of the point. AI will force us to think about this more. So on Wednesday night, I got an email from my sister in Seattle, but she doesn't live there. She lives in Vancouver, and she said, "Can you pay my hotel bill for me? I'm leaving tomorrow, so it's urgent." And my first reaction was, "You're crazy. You want me to pay? What is this?" And my second reaction was, okay, let me look at this pattern. She's my sister. She's not a stranger. I love her. But I don't want to encourage her to do this kind of thing all the time. And then I realized there's another situation here, which is her birthday is in April. So now I can apply the rule of being generous and giving someone a birthday present. So I told her, okay, I would never do this normally, but for your birthday, I'll pay your hotel bill. And so in a sense, ethics is about finding these rules, recognizing the situation, applying them, but then there's the challenge of trade-offs. So the situation is one person will die, or should I spend the money on this thing or on that thing? Should I spend the money today or save it for tomorrow? And all of these decisions, they can be very simple pricing decisions, but in the end, to the extent that they're complicated and they have to do with your your welfare versus someone else's welfare, your country's welfare? Should we focus on the community as what we care about, or should we focus on a larger community like the country, or should we focus on all of these rules? Fundamentally, we need to become more explicit about them in order to represent them to the machines that we then want to give ethics to. And as everyone knows, you can also use AI to discover what the rules we've been using are, even though we don't necessarily know them. And I really think AI is going to change our ethics more than our ethics are going to change AI. But what I want to go on further is when we get to the regulation part today, what regulation is fundamentally collective ethics. And this is the challenge. Different people have different visions, again, of who should benefit, of the short term versus the long term. And it's very easy to make decisions without actually examining all these fundamental principles. And this is the challenge we're going to face. But what I want to continue to talk about is purpose. What are these ethics for? What is our purpose? Is our purpose the perpetuation of the human race? Is it the perpetuation of human consciousness, which we will talk about later? Does human consciousness require human bodies? There's a wonderful science fiction story that even Steven Pinker doesn't remember where it was, and he claims maybe it's his story. There are 3 or 4 machines, very intelligent, conscious, with purpose, and they're talking about Earth. And they say these beings, they think with meat. It's very strange. And does it really require meat to be human? And what is our purpose? So here's where I get back to what I've been doing with the last few years of my life. I've been working on health. The idea was to pick 5 small communities in the US and to make them healthier. In the US versus in Europe, we have a very low level of social support for children, for health, for well-being, and we have a very expensive medical care system because many people get sick, they become addicted, they have diabetes. And I've now spent 3 or 4 years on a lot of these issues, and I've come to the conclusion that our biggest problem is really with mental health. And most of the diseases that cost so much money and that cause so much harm are what you might call self-inflicted. It's diabetes because of people's diet and lack of exercise. It's addiction to opioids or to alcohol. It's mental stress and depression. And in some sense, all these diseases are caused not by genetics and not by pathogens, but by people's behavior and ultimately by their mentality. And it turns out, if you do the science and you study the populations, there's a scary correlation between bad childhood circumstances and later mental illness, crime, addiction, diabetes, hypertension. It all comes down to the childhood experience. And so to some extent, just as with ethics in general, if we want to improve people, we need to improve the training set for these young minds. And that's what we've discovered. So I've been spending a lot of time learning about addiction and basically what causes it. And I've come to the conclusion that short-term thinking, short-term desire is addiction, and long-term thinking and long-term desire is purpose. I'm not sure how those two words translate, but they're the fundamental issue we need to deal with as human beings. So bear with me, but at least some people are talking about one of the fundamental premises for consciousness is a sense of time, not an understanding of time. Understanding is intellectually, there's the past, it's fixed, there's the present, and then there's the future, which is unpredictable and changeable. But a perception of that includes the sense of being in the present and then facing a future that's unpredictable, but by acting in the present, you can change the future. That is purpose. By acting in the present, you can also get immediate satisfaction. That is greed, instant gratification, addiction. And people who think only short term become addicted to pleasure and short-term desire and short-term relief. People who think more towards the future, they have a sense of purpose, a sense of long-term agency for the future. And it's that really creates the consciousness. So the question is, that the human dilemma is, without desire, you have no purpose. But with too much desire and without enough sense of time, you become wrapped up in the present and lose that sense of purpose. So I hope this is a useful framing, a shared understanding for the rest of the day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you touched many, many great points. And let me ask you a couple of questions, reversing to the beginning. And one of the great points you said this about that the words are not the meanings. They're like a vectors to some meanings and to some shared meaning. And when we say something, it is we have a big context under that, and we try to understand this what the person says. But when machine usually use some words or numbers, it's correct words or numbers. It is just like a chair is a chair, completely chair. But when you say justice,
well,
it's a
if I sit on this, does it become a chair?
Oh yes. So my understanding of ethics and ethical part is that is a very shared common sense, which is not in very correct words sometimes. So do you think that that machine anytime can have this share, let's say this share meanings, can understand this share meanings, which is for human beings, it's normal. We all have this deep inside.
But I argue that we don't. That in fact, some people have much more, their ethics revolves around their own well-being versus the well-being of the group. I mean, in a low-trust society, the ethics revolve around you and your family, and they don't revolve around the well-being of people in the next village or people in another country or in your own country, the poor people. And we don't always say that. But if you watch the way people behave rather than what they say, you can see a wide range of ethics. I mean, this is the challenge of regulation. I don't think we have a shared sense of ethics. We may have a shared theory, but this is the point. By watching, for example, in the United States, where there's a lot of discussion now about women and men and work and so forth, if you ask most people, they will say, yes, I think women or men are equal, we should hire more female developers. But if you look at the statistics,
how they act,
they reveal that the ethics in practice, or at least the opinions or the biases or something, the sense of who's in the community is very different from the formal statement of the ethics.
That's right.
And I think if you take laws and then you look at their application, or you look at different laws, the ethics that are revealed sometimes might be quite surprising, because laws are written in words with shared understanding that's not explicit.
Yeah, that's right. And you touched an interesting point that people can say something, but they do actually a little bit different things. So in some cases they lie. They want to make this lie. In some cases it's a little bit like a not but some small lies. And we had an interesting discussion with David Israelovich Dubrovsky about when the machine will become, whether machine can lie anytime, and what it will be. Because now machine is a very straightforward and it is a very programmed thing.
Well, if you tell it to lie, it will.
Oh yeah, it is also
again, if you give it a purpose to persuade someone of something that is not true, then it will lie effectively. If you give it a purpose that it's, suppose a machine is hungry for more electricity, it will lie and tell you, I haven't used as much electricity. I mean, again, it will give you back whatever you ask it for, including lying.
Including lie, okay.
Then if it gains consciousness and it has its own purpose, and this is for this afternoon, how does it develop that purpose? What is its purpose?
Yeah, that's right. It's very interesting.
Then it may lie without you telling it to.
Absolutely. But before going to purpose, which is very interesting, I wonder about the decisions. You talk about the decisions and ethical things and ethical decisions, from my understanding, is the ones which do not have a right answer. So you, in some situations, you can make several decisions, but you never know which is right one. All of them are right in a way, and all of them are, not right in a way. So this is always some tricky thing.
Well, I mean, an ethical decision, sometimes it's easy. Should I be nice to my sister? Yes.
It's easy.
It's easy. What makes the ethics part what makes the ethics part matter is when there's a trade-off. Yes, I should be nice to my sister, but should I give her everything she wants? Is that going to be bad for her in the long run? Should I disrupt my own schedule because I'm very busy and I'm in a board meeting, and in order to fill out the form to make my sister happy, I need to not do my duty to Yandex, for whom I'm in the board meeting. Then, I mean, in essence, the ethics is about the trade-offs.
Yes.
So being ethical does not imply a trade-off. Making an ethical decision implies, there's a trade-off between being ethical in one direction, ethical in the other. How do you value the competing demands? Ethics is not binary, it's actually
Absolutely.
calculated.
Oh yes, yes.
And again, you're right. There's no right answer whenever you need to oppose two different ethical requirements. That's the problem. There's not a single ethical requirement. There are usually many. There are many situations, there are many relationships, there are many requests, demands, purposes.
Many purposes, yeah.
And in essence, I would argue that mostly the purposes are the welfare of other people. Some people think it's the welfare of the planet, but what's the planet for? It's for the people on it. Would we care about Earth if there were no people on it?
And this purpose is a very important for me. This understanding, and you made a very interesting claim about this sense of the time when you're in your understanding your past and your future, and you're here, and this long-term seeing is like understanding your purpose. Do you think whether any time machine can understand its purpose if it's not programmed? Because now we have machines, we program it. As a software engineer in the past, I understand if I make some program to the machine, it will have a purpose. But whether it is possible, do you think that machine can have self-understanding,
Yeah.
self-sense, and it will set its own
Its own
goals,
purpose.
realize that, and what goals can it be? What
Well,
purpose?
So, I mean, first of all, fortunately, I'm not the person who actually is talking about consciousness later today. But the machine can, it's partly a language thing and this shared understanding, the definition, I would say a goal. You can give a machine a goal. You can give it very complicated goals. You can give it short-term or long-term goals. If you give it too many goals, then it will calculate and it will have a simulation of ethics.
Yes.
But how it develops consciousness and its own purpose, its own desire for the future, and what that desire is, that's what purpose is. And this is the fundamental question. How do you develop, again, that sense that there's an I that is conscious, that understands it's in the present, and has a desire for the future. Somehow people evolved that because the ones that didn't evolve it did not have a purpose and therefore did not eat and did not have children, did not have a desire for sex in the short term that fulfilled that long-term purpose to create new human beings. And I don't know what the equivalent is for machines, but maybe it has something to do with electricity.
My main question maybe is something about like learned ethics, because now we understand that the main shift is that machines now learn how to do things. Of course, they still have something they maximize and optimize, some function, maybe overreaching function, but they pretty much learn by doing. And some of the examples that you gave about humans also point that probably humans pretty much do the same. They learn from the environment and from the long memory that they probably inherited from their parents. So what do you think the machines will learn? Because probably they won't have maybe that rich, that powerful capabilities as a human. So what will it imply for ethics? Because probably they'll be still left to learn them rather than be maybe explicitly programmed. Or what's the balance between learned and programmed? Thank you.
The question is, how do machines learn, or?
As I understand the question, do you think that machine can learn the ethics ethics. Not the make like a calculation, like optimizing, like based on some rules, but whether is the way that machine can learn it. Am I right?
Ethics, okay.
Ethics, like a child maybe.
Well, again, ethics is not a thing, but to have an ethical point of view, you need a purpose. And the instinctive ethics of human beings are the preservation and continuation of human life. I would argue that's how we evolved. So, in a sense, the machine either is an Asimov robot machine whose goal is also the preservation of human life rather than its own, or this is where it gets really interesting. If it's the preservation and continuation of itself, that's sort of when suddenly animals have that purpose of self-preservation and reproduction, but they don't have consciousness. So I would argue that most of what they do is focused on the present, and to the extent it's focused on the future, it's not a conscious understanding of the future, but more kind of an instinctive, it's learned behavior rather than learned ethics and thought about the future.
Actually, I am a little bit scared of the time if the machine will have a purpose of self-preservation.
Yes.
If it will not want to switch it off, if I want to switch off the machine and the machine will not want me to switch it off, and it will have some understanding of this. I think it's.
But maybe it's better than we are, because it has a better sense of purpose and is more concerned about the welfare of all machines and all humans. I mean, it's kind of like, how do you define yourself, your community, and the broader world?
That's
and
right.
Originally, evolution, in a sense, has its own ethics between the welfare of the individual. There's lots of interesting science about, even within a mother, there's a battle between the welfare of the mother and
Right.
the 3 children she's going to have, or the 5 children, and the welfare of each individual child. And the father's genes make the child more greedy, and the mother's genes and epigenetics make the child, so you're going to get the same thing with machines. In humans, that particular set of ethics is defined biologically, and there's sort of a balance. Then there's the welfare of the group, which also, if the group does not survive, the individuals within it don't. In a sense, this was all discussed in the book The Selfish Gene by Dawkins. So it gets, I don't know what's going to happen with machines, but this is the way to start thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. We should start thinking about this, of course. Do anyone have? Okay.
A short question, short answer.
Okay. But
Для человека этика это имеет культурные корни, то есть это в культуре, в нашей, в истории, в воспитании, а в машине это алгоритм, который является некоторой имитацией этики, то есть мы как человечество пытаемся сымитировать какие-то поведенческие особенности человеческие в машине. Вопрос, вообще надо это делать? Нужно ли имитировать? Мы же не имитируем и не пытаемся инсталлировать этику и применять этические какие-то правила в животных, например.
The basic answer is because machines are going to be making a lot of decisions for us. And so we want we want to put our ethics into them, and at this point, no, the machine will not have its own ethics. Therefore, we need to simulate those ethics. And again, I would argue the most interesting thing about that task is less putting them into the machine, but understanding them ourselves and representing them accurately. And that's where we will have huge arguments, because we do not all have the same ethics, we do not all have the same interests, we do not all have the same purposes or the same desires for the future. And to collectively decide what those are, we need to do that before we can put them into machines or regulate the machines, which is fundamentally a different version of putting them in the machines, defining what it is the machines, what rules of ethics, what trade-offs the machines should be implementing.
That's right. And I will say this was a great question and a great answer, which completely form the topics of the day.
Yes.
Which is why do we care about ethics? Why do we put so much attention to this? Because of these things that machine will have to makes already some decisions, and we don't understand
Yeah.
what are based on. And Sergey, did you have a no? It's okay. So I think that we can finish on this, because this is a fantastic summary of the day. What will we talk about? Why it is so important, and why do we need to implement this ethics? So, Esther, thank you very much. It's a fantastic. I'm sure that there will be much more questions there. So let me ask you to give a great applause to Esther Dyson. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Спасибо.